Now in this portion of the cat, we're going to examine several things. First of all, we're going to take a look at the abdominal cavity of the cat, which comprises this portion right here. It's from the liver down to about the bladder. Next, we'll take a look at the thoracic cavity of the cat, which is from the diaphragm up here to the esophagus and trachea. So, first of all, let's take a look at the abdominal cavity. Now, once we've opened up the cat, we've cut down through the rectus abdominis muscles of the cat, and we've peeled back the muscles to expose the abdominal cavity. Now, one of the largest organs in the abdominal cavity, and one of the easiest ones to locate, is first of all the liver. Now, the liver contains several lobes. You have first lateral lobes of the liver, which are the two on the outside here, two large lobes, and then you'll have the medial lobes of the liver, which are these here. Medial meaning more towards the center of the liver. And lastly, you have one more lobe of the liver, which we'll zoom in on, is down here. This is referred to as the caudate lobe, and this is a small lobe down here. So we have the caudate lobe, the two lateral lobes, two medial lobes of the liver, and while we're here on the liver, we might as well take a quick look at the gallbladder. The gallbladder is located right here, has a little bit different characteristic than the rest of the tissue of the liver because it is primarily a sac. We know the gallbladder carries and stores the bile produced by the liver, and the gallbladder is located right here. Sometimes the gallbladder on the cat will be a little bit of a greenish color. Next, we'll push the liver aside and we'll examine the stomach of the cat. The stomach has already been dissected, so I'll pull out the stomach just to show some of the features. Here's the stomach, which is a large sac on the cat, and it's already been dissected. We have two portions of the stomach. First of all, we have an opening here, that will attach to the duodenum. We also have an opening here, the cardiac opening, and this will attach to the esophagus. If we open up the stomach of the cat, we can see several things. One is we can see several ridges, like this one right here, which are called rugae. And these ridges are used to help churn the food in the stomach. These are rugae, and the ridges in the stomach used to help churn the food. You'll also notice, because these cats have been double injected, there's several arteries here within the stomach. These arteries are here to take away digested food to supply energy for the cells. So this is the stomach of the cat. It'd be one of the first organs you'll run up against when examining the abdominal pelvic cavity. So, just to go back for a second, we have the liver. Right under the liver we have the stomach. Within the liver we have the small gallbladder. If we move the stomach aside for just a moment, there's a couple other organs I would like for you to examine. First of all, this organ here. It's a little tougher, it's a little denser organ, and the organ itself lies on the lateral wall of the cat, on the left side of the cat. This is the cat's spleen. Some spleens will be larger than others depending on the conditions of the cat when we receive them. This is the spleen. It will lie lateral to the stomach up against the wall. A couple other things we'll notice, first of all, is we can start with the small intestine. Most of the abdominal cavity is filled with the small intestine, and that's what I have here in my fingers. The small intestine is broken up into several parts. The first part of the small intestine, I'll point to it here. This first C-shaped portion of the small intestine is called the duodenum. The duodenum. And the duodenum is the first portion of the small intestine to come out of the stomach. The duodenum with its C shape, now here on the C-shaped portion of the duodenum, if we flip that portion over, we'll be able to examine this portion here. And it's difficult to find oftentimes because the tissue isn't quite different, but yet it is. This portion right here is the pancreas. And within the C-shaped portion of the duodenum is a tissue here called the pancreas, which produces insulin, as well as other digestive enzymes. This is only a portion of it. It runs all the way back and underneath the stomach. That's the duodenum, the first portion of the small intestine. From there, we can continue in all of the convolutions of the small intestine, and from the duodenum, the next portion, which is difficult to differentiate, the next portion is called the jejunum. The jejunum. And the jejunum makes up, about another half of all of the small intestine. The last portion of the small intestine, you can see all the convolutions here. The small intestine is also held together by this mesentery. The mesentery of the small intestine contains all the blood vessels, contains a little bit of adipose. But if we continue on in the small intestine, the very last portion of the small intestine is called the ileum. The ileum. It'll be about the last quarter of the small intestine. So the three parts that we've discussed are the duodenum, next the jejunum, and lastly the ileum. They're hard to differentiate on the small intestine itself. Lastly, we'll take a look at the large intestine. And the large intestine has three parts also. I'll begin with the last portion just to make it easier. The last portion of the small intestine is what is known as the descending colon. That's this portion here, the descending colon. And we can see it contains many blood vessels and quite a bit of mesentery. This is the descending colon. The next portion, which will probably be hard for you to see, but the next portion is called the transverse section. And the transverse colon is this portion here. This portion here. So you have the descending, the transverse, and lastly the ascending, which is this portion here. So we have the ascending, the transverse, descending portions of the colon. Those are the three portions of the colon that we see here in the cat. From there, we find a large sac-like structure, which is the bladder. This is the bladder. And we find the bladder right at the end, right near the descending colon of the large intestine. Another structure, two structures that I'll show you, just because we're in this area, is the kidney. This is one kidney here. It's stained because the veins have been injected. It's been stained blue. And on the other side, over here, a kidney that hasn't been stained so well. And this is the other kidney right here. Most of the kidneys are surrounded by a membrane and also by adipose. We'll stop there now for the abdominal cavity of the cat.